So with Tailwind, you can use it for many different frameworks like Vue.js, Next.js. In our case, we're just going to be using it as a post CSS plugin. So to install, we can also use it as a CDN, but that's it has some limitations. So in our case, we're just going to use npm to install Tailwind, and then we will get stuck in with our project. Okay, so we need to have a folder for our workspace. In our case, we made a folder called Tailwind to hold our Tailwind project, and the first project will be an Apple website. So we'll make a folder called Apple, and then we will we'll open terminal inside it. We'll open it inside VS Code, sorry. And then we will make a new terminal in VS Code so we can run npm and install Tailwind. So right over here we just have to do npm install init, and then that will initialize the npm, will initialize our project. And right over here we can install Tailwind. So let's go over to the getting started guide, installation guide. So we just need to use npm install Tailwind CSS. So we're going through the installation guide for how to add Tailwind CSS into your project. As I explained earlier, we're not going to be using a Vue.js application or any frameworks like React or Next.js. So we're just going to be using Tailwind as a post CSS plugin. So the first thing that we have already done is install Tailwind using npm. You can go ahead and use Yarn if you want to, but in our case we're just using npm. So now let's add Tailwind to our CSS. So we want to go ahead and make a new folder. So we'll call it source, and in this folder we'll have style.css. So make a new file in the source folder, call it style.css, and inside this style.css, just like it's mentioned in the installation guide, we're going to have 3 lines of code. So we're going to include the base, the components, and the utilities in this style.css. Go back to our installation guide. There's going to be a lot of steps that we can just skip through because they're optional. So let's go down all the way to using Tailwind CLI. Okay, so now we need to add a new script inside our package.json. So let's go over here. Let's go over to the scripts section inside the package.json file, and we need to have our custom script. So we want to use the same one that is listed on the website over here. We just need to basically customize it so it meets our folder and file, which is style.css. So make sure you do that. So we need to also have a new folder called public/style.css, which is basically what we'll be using in our project. And we also have an index.html to have our HTML content. And then we can go ahead and run the script by using npm run build css, and that should build our CSS. So if we go to now public style.css, you can see all of the stuff that is in source has been actually published inside the style.css folder in public. So now we can link this style.css inside our public folder, and we can include it inside index.html, and we can use all of these classes that we want, whichever class we want. For example, width, so like w10, as you can see this is a class, we can just use it directly over here. Just to clarify and summarize what we have done right here is we have made a script called build CSS. So what that does, it will basically package all of our, if we go to style.css, it will package all of the base components and utilities in Tailwind, and it will basically publish it inside style.css. And this is what we will be linking to our website, so we can use it directly from style.css. And that basically covers what we've just done. And let's go ahead to our next step, which is basically building the website. So now let's link the style.css inside our HTML website. So we just have to use the link tag, and we'll include our style.css. Now let's just test it quickly. Let's have let's add Apple for our title, which is going to be an Apple website, and let's add something over here and style it to make sure that we have actually linked it and it's actually working. So let's just make a new h1, and we'll give it text screen using text screen 500 using the Tailwind class. Let's try it now. Let's see. Let's open it up, and as you can see, we have actually formatted the text and it has been styled. So we have actually linked the Tailwind style.css. So now we can go ahead and we can continue with our website, which is to build an Apple website. Okay. Right, so let's get started in this project. First of all, we're going to be making a beautiful Apple website in this project. So let's go through it. First of all, we're going to have a nice header, a navigation bar. On the left of this navigation bar, we're going to have a few buttons that will take us to the different sections in the website. And on the right, we're going to have the social media icons and a call to action button. So when the user, when he lands on this website, he's going to see this beautiful display over here with this beautiful video. And we're going to have a slogan or something here. We're probably going to change that as we do the project. Then when he scrolls down, he's going to see these 3 tiles, which is what the website is about. So we're going to have a section for iPad Pro, MacBook Pro, and then iPhone 12. We'll see what we'll do with that, because right now we just have a contact section. Then when he scrolls down, he's going to see this iPad Pro section. So again, in this course, we're going to be showing you how to make beautiful websites using Tailwind. And let's go down. This section is for MacBook Pro. So we have a beautiful image on the left and a H1 with some paragraph text. And over here we're going to have a section for the legends of Apple. So you know, Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, and these 2 guys that we don't even know. We just put them. So again, over here is going to be some H1 with some text, and we're going to have these 4 profile images with some titles of what they do in the company, and then we're going to have a contact us section. So just a H1 with some text, and we're going to have some icons as well, plain contact form, and then we're going to have a footer. As you can see how we've designed it, each section has this diagonal cut, so it's just something new. You know, you don't see it that often. So let's get started with actually designing this website. So let's go and make a new page. First of all, we need to use a CDN. So this CDN, I will include it in a text file in the project, so make sure you look for that. So I just figured out that I have the wrong CDN. Make sure you paste in the correct one, which is Font Awesome CDN. And okay, so then we're just going to have a title, which is Apple, and we're going to have a body section. The body section just we'll get started now. It started with the navigation section, navigation bar. So we're going to have nav, and then for the class we're going to have top 0, which basically makes it stuck to the top, and then we're going to give it absolute positioning, and we're going to give it Z50, which makes it come to the front of the website, and then we're going to give it width full, so it can take up the full width. We're going to be using flex and flex wrap, so that's when we have smaller displays, the elements inside it will be wrapped. And we're going to center it using item center, so the items of it will be center. So if we just divide between, we need to also add the end to make them spread out. So one is all the way to the left, and the other one is all the way to the right. And we're going to have some padding X and Y, so PX2 for horizontal padding, and then vertical padding PY3. Okay, so now inside this navigation section we're going to have a div. So we're going to have 2 divs basically, and the first one we're going to style it like this. So we're going to use the container class and do PX4 for horizontal padding, margin auto, MX auto, and we'll use flex and flex wrap to make sure that the items will be wrapped on different displays, and item center. Finally, justify between as well. So now inside this div, let's see, we're gonna have another div. For this div, we're gonna give it width full, and it's going to be relatively positioned. So we're gonna use relative, and we're gonna use flex and justify between. And so for large displays, we're gonna make the width auto, and we're gonna make it static, and we're gonna make it a block as well, so it takes up the entire width. And for large displays, we're also gonna have justify start, so that all the elements are actually inserted at the beginning in the left, from left to right. Okay, so after that we're gonna have an anchor, and for this anchor we're gonna use text SM. We want to make the font bold, and we're gonna relax the leading, so we're gonna do leading relaxed. Alright, so now let's block the inline block, and then let's see what else we have. So I'm R4, so margin right 4, and then padding vertical 2, PY2. Now we want to prevent wrapping, so we'll use white space no wrap, because white people can't wrap. So let's go and search white space no wrap and see the different variations and Tailwind. So anything you need, just search for it and write Tailwind CSS. The documentation is very clear and you can find anything you need. So these are all the different variations, as you can see, and this explains it right over here. So it basically prevents wrapping when an element, when you have a small width and the element has to wrap down, it would prevent it from wrapping. So let's get back to the code, and we also want to use uppercase to make the text capital inside the anchor, and we also want to make it white, and we're gonna have home, so it will take us to the home section. So let's have a look and let's see how this all looks. Hopefully it looks good. Also we want to give it a black background as well, so do BG black inside the body. This is just temporary, the BG black. I'm going to remove it, and I'm going to be depending on a black video, so, and all these white elements will show very clearly. So let's have a look, let's see what's okay, it looks very good so far. So now we need to continue the navigation bar and do the different buttons as well. So next we're going to be adding a button, so right button and then dots. So for the class we're going to have cursor pointer, because we want to cursor pointer, and then we're going to do text large, extra large, sorry, and we're going to have leading none, because there's no leading, so we can't relax the leading, so leading none. I'm joking, let me explain this to you. So just to explain these classes, cursor pointer will actually, when you hover over the button, it will show up like a hand symbol, just like that, as you can see. And text large is basically self-explanatory. And what leading none does, so you have different types of spacing between text. So let's just search for this inside the Tailwind documentation. So as you can see, you have all these variations, and leading none, these are the examples. So we have leading none, leading tight, leading snug, normal, and then relaxed and loose. So as you can see, the leading loose, it gives it more spacing between them, and leading none, it makes it the least spacing between them. So we want to use leading none. And then, so after we have done this button, let's see what else can we, okay, so we also need to give it some padding, horizontal and padding vertical, so px3 and py1, so for vertical as well. And we're also going to give it a border, and we'll make the border solid and make it also transparent as well, and rounded, so we'll give it some sort of border radius. And the background will also make it transparent for the button. Okay, we also want to make this into a block element. And for large devices, we want to hide this button. So LG hidden, and we're going to make the outline none. We don't want any outline for this button. And when we focus, okay, let me just carry on. Let's finish this first. And when we focus on the button, when the button is in focus, we want to do outline none. Okay, so now let's have a look how it looks like. Let's well, actually let's just finish it off. The type equals button, and we have it on click as well. We'll just do in a second. Let's just see how it looks first. So now we also need to have an icon for the navigation bar. So when we click on, when we're on a small screen, we want to see a hamburger icon. So when we click it, this will open up the menu. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to have, we're going to make it white using text white, and we're going to use font awesome, and we're going to use the hamburger icon, which is FA bars. The outline, we're removing it so we can actually show the font awesome icon. As you can see over here, we're also hiding it for large screen and large devices because we don't need it. It's only for hamburger menus. So now if we go to the mobile device, we can actually see it. Okay. So for the on-click listener, we will call a function. So the function, let's see, we'll call it toggle navbar. So this will basically toggle the navbar, and we will pass in the ID, which is example collapse navbar. And now let's implement this toggle navbar function. So let's go all the way down, have some script tags, and then do function. So we'll actually write function toggle navbar, and this will take collapse ID as the parameter, so we can toggle the actual elements by its ID. And we're gonna do document.getElement by ID, that good stuff, and then collapse ID, and then class list toggle hidden, and we'll also copy and paste this, and we'll also have block, so that way we can toggle the block. And so that will basically toggle the hidden attribute. So the class hidden, if it's true, it will be false. If it's false, it will be true. And for the same thing with the block as well. Okay, so right below the div, we want to have another div. So below the button and div, we're going to have a new div, and for the class, we'll use, so for large screens, we'll use flex, and we'll use flex grow to allow this div to take up the entire area. Then we will center it as well using item center, so the items inside this div will be centered, and the background can be white, so we'll use BG white. And for large screens, we want to make the background transparent, and also for large screens we want to make the shadow none, and we also want to make it hidden. Okay, now for the ID, we also want to give it an ID, which is example collapse navbar. This way we can actually toggle it using its ID. Okay, so now we're gonna have, so basically, as you can see over here, just like what we've done, we toggle it based on the example collapse navbar ID, so it will find it and it will basically toggle it, make it hidden, or make it visible. Okay, so now we want to have a unordered list using UL, unified list. So for this list, we're going to give it a class. Now the class we'll use is flex, so we'll be using flex, and we'll do flex call. And for large devices, we'll make it into a row. So if the device is a large screen, then we'll be actually using a row for this list. And then we'll also do list none and margin right auto. So in our case, we want to use list none because we're not using any bullet points for our list items. There's actually a few variations. Let's check them out on Tailwind. Okay, so as you can see, there's 3 types. So the one we're using is list none, there's list decimal, and you have bullet points numbered and no bullet points. So yeah, whenever you want anything, you can just search it on Tailwind, and it will explain everything. If any of these classes you don't understand, just search it on Tailwind. Okay. So let's see. We'll have a list item inside this list, and for this list item, we'll use flex, and we'll center the items inside this list item. So inside this list item, we're going to have anchor. So it will actually take us to the. So we're going to be using the iPad section for this anchor. So it will take us to the iPad section. And now for the class, we're going to use text white for large screens. And on large screens, we're going to have hover. When we hover over it, we'll make the text grey with a shade of 300. So on LG hover, we'll have text grey, and there's a lot of shades. We'll use 300 for this shade. And if it's not hovered, then we'll use a shade of 800. So text grey, shade of 800. And also, I want to add some padding for horizontal and vertical. So for horizontal, we'll do px3, and for vertical padding, we'll use 4. And on large devices, we'll use we'll do py2. And okay, so we also want to add some flex to this one and center the items inside this anchor. Now we also want to make the text small, extra small actually, and we also want to capitalize the text and make it bold. So we'll use uppercase and font bold as well. We need to do that. And now we need to have an icon inside this. Okay, so for this icon, we'll do text for large devices. We'll do text gray 300, and we'll do text gray 500 for other devices. And also for we want to have font awesome icon, so we'll use the tablet icon, FA tablets, and we'll make the text large, and we'll make it bigger using leading large. Okay, so now we've done the icon. Now we will want to add iPad to it, so like the anchor text will have iPad, so the user knows this is the iPad section, and you can open it. So let's have a look at so far what we've reached. Okay, as you can see, we need some more padding or margin between these two. Let's give it some margin right as well to give it some space between the icon. Okay, now let's do the other. So let's just refresh. Okay, it's working. So now let's have another list item inside this navigation bar. And so all we're going to change is we're going to copy paste it. The only thing we're going to change is the ID. Let's make it to MacBook, so it will take us to the MacBook section. And also the icon, let's change it to, let's have a look at font awesome libraries. Let's see if there's a nice icon that we can select. Also the text, we want to make it MacBook as well. Make sure you do that. Search for MacBook. Okay, that's a good one. Let's just take this icon. So instead of FA tablets, we're going to do FA laptop. Let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. Now let's copy and paste this list item as well, so we can do it again for the team section. So for the team section, we need to change the ID again. So we want to change the anchor text as well. We'll do team, and also the icon. So let's go over to font awesome. Let's have a look at some icons for teams. Okay, that looks pretty nice, yeah. So we'll just use the users. Now let's have a look. Okay, that looks very nice. Now it's looking much better. Okay, let's carry on. Now we have another section that we need to add, which is contact us. So again, copy and pasting it, changing the ID to contact us, and we'll change it just contact us enough, and contact us for the anchor text. And that should be, we need to have like a message icon or something like that. So let's search for an icon. Okay, that looks nice. Take this one. That looks very nice. Okay, now, so we want to have another UL, another list over here for the right section of the navigation bar. So we're done with the left section, we're doing the right section now. Okay, so for the class we want to do flex and flex call. So it will be we'll use flex and we'll make it into a column. The direction of it will be a column, and for large devices we'll make it into a row. The list will be none, so we don't have any bullet points again. And for large screens we want to have margin left auto, so that way it will be aligned all the way to the right. Okay, now inside this list section we'll have a few list items right over here. So this is going to be the social icons. So the first one is going to be a Facebook icon. So okay, for this list item we're going to have flex and item center, so that the items are centered inside this list item. And the first thing we'll have is the anchor. Now this anchor, we'll make it white for large devices using LG text white. And for large devices as well, large screens, we're going to do hover. When you hover over it, it will change to the text grey with the shade of 300. And when you are not hovered over it, it will be text grey 500, 800 actually. Okay, now for padding, horizontal padding we'll do 3, and for vertical padding we will do 4. Then for large devices we'll do padding 2 for vertical padding, and we'll use flex item center. We'll use flex and we'll use item center to center the items. After we centered the items, we want to make the text really small, so we'll do text XS, extra small. So we want to also make the font bold and make it capitals as well. Why not? Okay, so now inside this we're gonna have an icon inside this, and for this icon let's make it grey 300 for large devices, and we'll do 500 for all the other devices. And we'll use font awesome icon. So right over here we want to have a Facebook icon. So let's search for the Facebook icon on the font awesome library. Okay, this one looks very nice, so let's select this one. Okay, so now we want to make text large to make it larger, and we'll also do leading large as well. Now inside this we're going to have a span. After the icon we're going to have a span, and the span will basically, the class will be hidden on large devices, and we'll use inline block and margin left 2. Now let's see how that looks. So this span is only for other devices that are not large screen, so it will be hidden for large devices, and the inline block will basically take up the whole block, the entire block, and margin left 2 will basically give it some margin left from the left side. That way it won't be stuck to the side. So as you can see, when we go to, if we go for small devices, and you can see how it looks like. So it will basically take up the entire section, and it will have a small margin left. Okay, so now let's continue with the other icons. So we want to copy and paste the Facebook icon, so we can have one for the Twitter icon. It's going to be the same thing. All we have to change is the icon name, which is Twitter. Okay, and now also we have an issue with this large flex row. We also want to change it and use a colon instead of a semicolon, so that would have been an issue, so make sure you do that. So let's refresh now. As you can see, it looks very nice. And now let's continue with the other stuff. So the last thing that we want to add in the right side of the navigation bar is a button, a call to action button, so the user can click it. Like for example, we'll do buy new MacBook, so this will be very clear to the user. Okay, so now for this button we want to make it white, and So first, actually, we want to have a list item. This is going to be inside the list item, and then for the list item class, flex and item center, just like I explained before. So it will use flex and it will center the items inside it, and then the button. So the button will use BG white, and we'll text rate 800. So we'll make it white, and we'll make the text 800 color shade. Sorry. And when it's active, we'll do 100. So we'll make it much lighter when the button is actually active. So we'll do BG gray 100, and we'll make the text really small using text XS. And for the fonts, we'll make it bold, and we'll also capitalize the characters of the text. Let's give it some padding 4 and 2, 4 for horizontal and 2 for vertical. Now we also want to make it rounded and give it a shadow, so that we will have a nice border radius and it will have a bit of a shadow. And when we hover over it, we want to make the so we'll give it a shadow as well for medium devices when we hover over it. No. We'll make it a medium shadow. The shadow will be medium shade, and the outline will also be none. And when we're focusing on it, the outline will also be none. And for large devices, we'll give it some margin right, and then we'll give the margin bottom 0 as well for large devices, and margin bottom 0 for large devices. And margin left 3 and margin bottom 3 for other devices. Okay, now for the type, it's going to be a button, and the text will have buy a new MacBook, for example. So the call to action will be buying a new MacBook. Let's have a look. Let's see how that looks so far. Okay, that looks very clean now, very beautiful. Let's add the icon next to the text. So let's see what can we do for the icon. Let's search. Let's have like a circle down, arrow pointing down, something like that. Let's search for something cool and awesome. Okay, that looks nice. So let's take this one. And let's see how that looks, this icon. Okay, that looks much better now. As you can see, the icon is quite stuck to the text, so let's give it some margin right too. So we'll do R2. And now let's refresh, that looks much better now. Okay, so now we should be done with the navigation bar. Now we can go ahead and get started with the homepage main section. Now let's open the main section now. Let's open some main tags inside our HTML. And okay, so in this main section, first thing we're going to have is a div. And the div, we're going to have a class relative, first of all. And then we'll do padding top 16 and padding bottom 32. So padding bottom 32 for large devices. And we're going to use flex, so it takes up the entire section, entire block. And we'll do content center. So the elements, so it will be centered, the content will be centered, and the items inside it will also be centered by using item center. And justify center as well. They pretty much do the same thing, but we'll just do all of them, so we make sure everything is centered. And then we'll do minimum height is full. We're using min h full. Okay. The minimum height will be 100%, and we're going to give it ID as well, so that we can navigate to it. And we'll give this home, so when the user goes in the navigation bar and he clicks on the home button, and it should take him, it would actually add the home to the URL, and that will take us to the home section. Okay, now we will, inside this div, we're going to have a new div, and this will basically hold the video of the, so we're going to have a beautiful background video, which I will show you in a second, and it will, so we're going to absolutely position it. So we'll have a div that is absolutely positioned, and we're going to make the width and height full. And now for the video, we're going to have a video right over here. We're going to make it autoplay, and we'll also keep it muted because we don't want any sound. And for the class we'll do top 0 and background center. That reminds me actually from back in the 2000s when you used to go into a website and you would get a video playing with sound, with like very loud sound. That was really awesome. Anyway, so let's carry on. Let's give it a source now. And for the source, let's go and find the video from Apple. And so we want to have a beautiful video that is black as well, so it matches with our theme. Let's see what they have. Okay, that looks very beautiful. Let's just use this one. So let's get the URL from it and we can add it to our source. Let's search MP4. It's definitely going to be an MP4. Okay, we found it. We'll also include this as a text file, so make sure to check the text file for any links. And this is going to be the first link for this project, or the second one actually. The CDN will be the first one. Okay, so now we want to. So as you can see, it looks absolutely beautiful, and it matches our theme. Okay, now we can continue. And so now that we've done the video, we'll have a new div after the video div. Yeah, so right under this one, we're gonna have a new div, and we'll use it. We'll make it into a container, and we're gonna keep it relatively positioned so that it's in order. It comes right under the other div, and the margin is going to be auto. So margin horizontal is going to be auto, and the div under it, inside it. Sorry, so we're gonna have a div inside this, and we're gonna use item center. And we're going to use flex, so that it takes up, it basically takes up the entire area that it can take up, and flex wrap as well, so that it wraps. If the display is very, like, if it's narrow, then it will basically wrap the content. So yeah, and now inside this we're going to have a new div, and we'll keep the width full, so we'll do W full. We have a few more, so we'll do, for large devices, the width will be 6 divided by 12. So, and then we also want to give it some padding for horizontal padding, so we'll do px4, and then margin left auto, and margin right auto as well, and we want to center it as well, text center, so that will basically center it nicely. And then after that we'll do a new div, and we'll have padding right 12 and another h1, then we'll have a h1 inside this div. And for this h1 we're going to do text white, and so the text will be white, and we're going to make the font semi-bold. We also want to make the text very large, so we'll do text 5XL, and we want to give it some padding as well, padding top. So we'll do margin top 32. Minus, sorry, we actually want to go up. So we want to make it go up. Okay, so now let's see how that looks. Also, we want to actually have H1 content inside this, so we'll do all systems Pro. Actually, no, let's have something else, not all systems Pro. Like, welcome to the Apple website. Welcome to Apple, that should be enough. Welcome to Apple. Okay, we want to make it white so it can show. It's white, but why is it not showing? That's very strange. Okay, so we need to also add a class for the text, because now we're having some issues with the video, because the video is absolutely positioned and we want to add text that is, you know, is going to conflict with the video. So in order to fix this, we're going to make our own custom class, and we'll do minimum height minimum height home, and for large devices we're going to be using it. So let's add this class inside style.css, and let's add it right under minimum height screen. And we're going to basically check the width. So this will only apply to large devices, and if the minimum width is 550 pixels, then we will actually have this class active. So we'll do minimum min h home lg, and we'll do minimum height of basically 75 vh. And now that should fix it. Let's check now if that fixes it. Okay, perfect. And it sits perfectly on top of this M1 chip. Now we want to add some tiles right on this home screen. It's looking very blank. So just to touch up this code, we want this block of element, which is welcome to Apple. So we have this welcome to Apple text. We want this only to show for large and medium devices. We don't want it to show on small devices. So what we will do, we will basically use hidden. We'll make it hidden, so that way it doesn't show. And so this div that is wrapping the welcome to Apple and the wrappers around it as well. So this div we want to add hidden, and then we will add MD block. That means it will be hidden until we reach a medium screen. Once it's medium screen or more, it will become a block, so it will actually not be hidden. So now let's see if that works out. This will keep the website responsive, so it will keep this design responsive. As you can see, now it's gone, and if I make it a large screen, then it appears. Also, we want to remove this BG black from the body section, and we want to add it inside the navigation bar section. This is so that the website, we don't need to make it black anymore, because we had this because we didn't have a video, but now we have a black video, we don't need it anymore. So now this will keep the whole website white, only the navigation bar will be black. So now we want to add a new section inside our main element. So in this main section, we're going to style it using padding bottom 20 and then margin top 40, and we're also going to give it a background of the color grey with the shade of 100. And this section will be the iPad section, so we'll give it an ID of iPad. That way we can click on the home page. So let's have a look how it looks like on here. So we still need to add content inside this section to see how it looks like. Let's give it a height of 500 pixels just for now, just to see how it looks like. As you can see, this is a section. So now when we click on iPad, it will take us down to the section that we want to look at. Okay, now we want to add a div inside this section. Now this div, we will style it with container, and we'll do margin horizontal auto, so MX auto, and we'll also do padding 4 for horizontal, so PX4. Then inside this we will have another div, and this div we will use flex, so it can take as much space as it can. So basically it will take as much space as it can with the other elements that are sharing the space with it. And we'll also do flex wrap, so that's when the elements are, when there's too many elements for the width, it will basically wrap down. Then inside this div we will have another div, and we will also style it using so first, for large devices we will do padding top 12, and we'll do padding top 6 for normal devices, and we'll do width full. For medium devices we'll do a third width, so width is 4 divided by 12, and we'll also give it padding horizontal 4, and we'll center it using text center. Now inside this div we'll have another div, so we'll make the positioning as relative, and we'll also use flex to use as much spacing as we can, and we'll make it into a column using flex col, and the minimum width is 0, and we'll also break up the words using break words. So what break words does is, if we have a really long word inside this line and it takes up more width than it's meant to, then it would actually break the word and it would put it on the next line. It would have like a dash next to it, and it would continue it on the next line. Okay, so after we do break words, we'll do background white, and then we'll do width full to make the width full. We'll do margin bottom 8, and we'll do shadow large and rounded large as well, to give it a shadow and give it some border radius. Okay, now that we've done this div, we need another div inside this div. This will basically hold the content now of the actual card. So it will hold like a icon and also some text. Okay, now for this div we want to do some padding x4, so padding horizontal 4 and padding vertical 5, and we'll do flex auto. So flex auto, what it does is it automatically adjusts the flexing of all the elements that share a space. So if we go to Tailwind CSS, let's have a look at the examples they have. If we go to flex auto, so as you can see, these are the different flexing variations. So this is the default behavior. As you can see, it doesn't take up the full width. In this case, it gives each element its own flexing as in accordance to the width it deserves, and also it will basically try and match the width of the parent elements. Okay, now we need to, so let's refresh this. As you can see, it looks very nice, this card, but it's empty. We need 2 more as well of these. So let's finish off this card, then we can copy and paste it and adjust it. So now we've done this. Okay, so we have a div inside this div that we just talked about. So now we're getting into the content of this card. Now this div, we're going to make it white. We'll give it a padding of 3. We will make it text. We'll use text center to center this div. We'll do inline flex. I will explain everything in a second. We'll do item center, and item center will basically adjust everything and make it center inside this div. Justify center does the same thing as well, and then we'll do width 12 and height 12, and we'll do MB5, margin bottom 5. We'll make the shadow large, and we'll do rounded full, and we'll use the color red, background red with a shade of 400. So just to go over the inline flex, just to go over what inline flex is, I mean a lot of them are self-explanatory and we've already covered them, but inline flex, so what it does is that the parent that holds, so this, in this case this class, the elements inside it will adjust its width in accordance to the elements inside it. That's why we also have to do, I think, item center and justify. Never mind, actually, just inline flex. That's what it does. Let's have a look at an example just to show you on Tailwind CSS. Remember, I highly recommend any class you don't know, just check it out on Tailwind CSS. The documentation is very clear and it shows you the examples, and it's very clear. Okay, so as you can see over here, use inline flex to create an inline flex container. So the container would basically adjust itself in accordance to the elements, so it would be very compact. Okay, now that we've covered that, let's continue. Also for P3, it will give padding for all areas, so top, left, right and bottom. Same with M3. If you were to have margin M3, just it will use all of the like top, left, left and bottom. It will, so top, right and left and bottom, it will give it padding and margin. Okay, so now let's continue. So now we will add an icon inside this div. Now the icon will be just a tablet, so we just want to have like a tablet icon. Let's try FA tablets. Let's see if that's does the job. Okay, yes, as you can see. Now, so after we have the tablet icon, we'll have a H6, H5, H6, H6, and we'll call it iPad Pro. And we'll have some text under this H6. So right below it, we'll have a paragraph, and we'll give it some margin top 2 and margin bottom 4. And let's give it some lorem ipsum inside it. Let's see how that looks as well. Okay, perfect. You just need to give it some background. Let's give it some background grey. So we'll do text grey 600. Not background, sorry, text. So a shade of 600. Let's see how that would look. Okay, now you can see there's a variation. There's a difference in color between the title and the paragraph. Okay, for H6, we'll make it larger, and we'll do font semi-bold. Let's see how that looks now. Okay, beautiful. Okay, now, alright guys, so now we've done with this iPad Pro section. Now let's go ahead and do the MacBook Pro section. It's going to be fairly similar, but it's not going to be exactly the same. So we're going to have its own classes. So now let's make a new div. So go under. So we're going to have 3 divs. After closing 3 divs, we're going to have a new div. So it's basically going to be inside the flex wrap class right over here. So our new div is going to be inside this root component. Okay. So now for this div, we're going to give it width full. And for medium devices, we will do a third width, 4 divided by 12 basically. And we're going to give it padding 4. 1 second, let's just solve this issue, because then when we do quarter, a third is going to give us an issue. So okay, and then padding horizontal 4, and we want to center this div. Now inside this div, we will have another div. And this one is going to be relatively positioned, and we'll use flex, and it will be a column. The minimum width is 0, and we want to break the words inside it, so like long words will be broken, just like I explained before. And the background is going to be white, and the width will be full. Margin bottom, we'll give it 8. And we'll do a strong shadow using shadow large, and we'll also do rounded large. Now inside this div, we'll also have another div, and we'll use padding 4, padding 4 for horizontal, sorry, so px4, and we'll do padding vertical 5, and we'll do flex auto. This div will basically hold the content of the card, just like we did with the iPad Pro, as you can see over here. And again, flex auto, so we have padding horizontal 4, padding vertical 5, and flex auto will basically manage the flex of the contents automatically, so that they take the necessary proportions for their own content. Okay, so now inside this, we're going to have another div for the icon. Inside this, so this div for the icon is going to be text white and padding 3, text center. We'll center this using text center, and we'll use inline flex, item center to center it, justify center, center the items inside it, width of 12 and height of 12, margin bottom of 5, and we'll do shadow large. We'll also do rounded full, and we'll do background blue with a shade of 400. Just to go over this div, the classes that we included for the div. So most of them are self-explanatory, as we already explained. Inline Flex, just to cover this again, it takes the entire block, it takes the entire inline block, and it will adjust the flex accordingly so that it matches the width of the parent it's in. So the parent of this div will have a height, will have a width, sorry, and it will match that width, and it will align the elements inside it to be the same, to have like. Let me just explain to you on Chrome. I have an example over here on Tailwind. Let's see. Again, guys, anything you don't understand, any class, just search it on Tailwind. It makes it so much easier. So as you can see over here, we're using Flex. Now let's go to Inline Flex. As you can see, it takes up the entire section. It takes up an Inline Flex container. Okay, so now let's continue. Okay, so also just to add something, so Inline Flex, when you have a really small width, it wouldn't use flex wrap where the elements would go under each other. It would keep it in one line, even if the width is really small. So let's just have a look as well on our website. So as you can see, this is how it's looking so far. Also, rounded full, we use rounded full. It gives us a full circle. Like the border radius will be a complete circle. It wouldn't be just the edges. Okay, just like the iPad Pro. Now we need to give an icon. So let's use the icon. Let's see what icon shall we choose. Let's just try laptop, FA laptop. So FAS and then FA laptop. Okay, now let's have a look how that looks. Okay, beautiful. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to have this element here, this one a bit on top, and then this one just like this one on the same level over here. Okay, let's continue. Now we also need to have a title for this card, which is Macbook Pro. So we can pretty much copy paste this again. So text large, font semi-bold. We're just going to change it to MacBook Pro, and then we'll keep the lorem ipsum text, because I mean we can get some text if you want to, but we're just using lorem ipsum. Now we need to do the final card. So we have 3 cards. This is the third one. We're going to be doing it for iPhone. So it's going to be the same as the iPad Pro, so we can go ahead and copy paste that. And we can refresh, so we just need to change that to iPhone instead of iPad. And we also need to change the icon. So FA tablet, let's try phone. Let's see if that is. Let's try mobile. Okay, perfect. And now we can go ahead onto the next section. Now that we have a nice homepage main section, let's just go over one thing that I included, but now I can explain it to you. So we have minimum page home large. So that's a minimum height for home. It will take up the entire height of the main section. So if we were to remove that, this will show you what will happen exactly, because before we didn't have any content, now we do. Now we can explain it better. As you can see, these are really high because the other component is not taking is not having a minimum height. But once we give it a minimum height, it will give it it will take up more space, and then these cards will be lower. Okay, so now let's continue with this section. So after we have done this, we need a new div. This new div that we're going to be making is inside the div that is in the section. So as you can see, we have this section and we have this div, so this new div is going to be inside this div. Okay, so now for this div we're going to be using flex and flex wrap. So that's when the width is very small, the items will basically go will be wrapped, so they go on the next line. And we'll use item center to center everything, and margin top 32. Okay, now inside this section we will have another div. Now this div will basically hold the content of the section. It will hold basically an icon and also like some text. We'll get into that in a second. So for this we need some classes. We need a width full, and for medium devices the width will be 5/12. So 5/12, and we're gonna have padding horizontal 4. The margin right is gonna be automatic, and the margin left will also be automatic. So the margin left and right automatic will basically center the content of the div, and it will center it horizontally. Okay, so now inside this we're going to need another div Now this div will basically hold the icon of this section. So this is gonna be an iPad icon. So this div will, we'll use text gray 600, and we'll use padding 3. So we'll have a padding all around it with 3, and we'll center everything using text center. We'll center this div with text center, and then we'll use Inline Flex, just like I explained before. We're gonna center using item center as well, so that the items inside this div will also be centered. And same with justify center, pretty much does the same thing. And we'll give it a width of 16 and a height of 16. And we'll also give it a margin bottom of 6. We'll make the shadow large, and we will also make the rounded full so that it becomes into a circle shape. So the circle will be like a background for the icon. Also, let's give it a background color of gray 100, so a shade of 100. Okay, so now let's have a look how this looks like. Let's refresh. Okay, beautiful. Now we need some sort of icon inside this. So let's add a tablet icon inside it. So we'll use FA tablet, and we'll make it large using text large. Now after this div, let's actually have a look at how it looks like. We'll make it extra large actually also, and let's have a, okay, that looks beautiful. We just need now some sort of, we need more content in this section. So now let's also increase the background color, make it a bit more grey so it stands out more. And now let's give it a title using H3, and we'll make it very large title, so text 3XL, and margin bottom 2, and we'll make the font semi-bold. Don't want it to be really bold. Okay, so now let's put in some text inside the H3. Let's, for example, put in new iPad Pro, and let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. So now we need some promotional text right under this title for the iPad Pro. Okay, so let's use a paragraph, and let's style it using text large, and let's make the font light. Let's just put some text for now, or forever, and let's refresh. Okay, we need some modifications, so let's make it leading relaxed to give it some more spacing in between the words, and let's do margin top 4. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so now let's give it some color. Let's make it a bit more grey with a shade of like 700. So text grey 700. And now let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks much better. And now let's have another paragraph under it. And alright, now let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. So now let's exit this div that we're currently in, and let's open a new div. So now this div is basically going to hold the image. It's going to hold the right side of this section. And so let's use width full, and we'll do margin. Width for 1/3 basically. So 4/12 for medium devices, and we'll do padding for horizontal padding, and we'll do margin right auto and margin left auto. Okay, so now inside it we're going to have another div that will hold the image, and this div will use relative positioning, and we'll use flex to make it, and then assign the direction as flex column to make it into a column. And we'll use minimum width of 0. We will break the words so that the words when the width is too small, the words will be broken into two, they'll be broken into two and then connected with like a dash. Anyway, so the width is going to be also full using W full. Margin bottom of 6, and we'll do shadow large to make the shadow quite strong, and then we'll make it rounded large as well, and we'll make the background black. Now let's see how that looks. Okay, so we need to make it, we need some more content inside it, so it can actually, so it can be bigger. Okay, so now let's add the image inside it. So for alt, we're just gonna do ... because we don't have anything for now. For the source, let's go to the Apple website and let's find a nice image, a nice iPad image from Apple website. Okay, so I will personally use this image. You are free to choose whatever image you like. I recommend you go to Google Images and find one. We're just going to take this one. I recommend going on Google because it's easier to find. Otherwise, you will have to scrape this from the elements, which is quite hard because they don't let you just copy paste it. That's the thing with the Apple website, but you can easily get it from Google. Anyway, so now let's style this image. Let's see what classes we should do. Let's give it a width of full, and let's align it in the middle. And let's do let's round only the top edges using rounded C large. And now let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. So now let's add like a block quote. Let's add some text under this image. So let's use block quotes, and we'll style it. So just right under the image, do block quote, and we'll style it using relative positioning. We'll make the padding 8, and we'll make the margin bottom 4, and let's keep the background black to make it consistent. Let's see how that looks before we, well, let's just put in something here. Okay, let's just put in some let's just put in some white text inside it. Okay, beautiful. Actually, let's remove this text white and let's have a H3 inside it, and then, or actually let's make it H4. And let's style it using, let's make it large, and let's make it bold, and let's make it white. So inside it, let's have like iPad Pro 12.9 inch and 11 inch. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks very nice. Let's have like some promotional text as well. So right under it we'll have a paragraph, and we'll make the text medium, and we'll make the font light, we'll make the margin top 2, and let's make it white text, so text white. And let's just put some normal. Okay, let's see how that looks. Lovely jubbly. Okay. Alright developers, so now we have a new section. This section will be about the MacBook Pro. So let's start off by making a new section right after this current section. And it's going to be positioned, relatively positioned. And we're going to have some padding vertical 20. And we'll also make it black. And we're going to give this section an ID of MacBook so that we can navigate to it. When we click on the MacBook in the navigation bar, it should take us right down. So as you can see, the href is hashtag MacBook, which basically is the ID of the section, and it will take us right down to the section. Okay, so now that we have done that, now let's make a new div inside this section. So the purpose of this div is to have a very nice design where it will be like a horizontal diagonal sort of shape. We will show you in a second. So let's style it out. So we'll do bottom auto, top 0, left 0, right 0, and we'll make it full width, and we'll position it using absolute positioning, and we'll also, so now let's do overflow hidden. So that's why when the div is overflown, then the content will show. Okay, and we'll also do margin top minus 20. So minus margin top, and we'll do 20. Okay, and now inside this we will have an SVG. Actually, we'll also give it some style height of 80 pixels because we want to have some custom height, a specific height of 80 pixels. Inside this div, we will have SVG, and we will use. So let's do an SVG. Let's do the class attribute now, and we will use absolute positioning. We'll stick it to the bottom using bottom 0, and again we will use overflow hidden, so that when the space is really small and the content overflows, it will be hidden. Okay, so now we need to do this SVG. Now the SVG that I just mentioned, we actually got this from the internet, and it gives us a really cool effect inside the website. So each section is enclosed, and you can see like the different sections. I will have to show you, I guess, when it's after we implement it, so we'll see how it looks. So basically we're going to use the XMLNS attribute, which depends on the w3.org website, and it will use so it will be www.w3.org/2000/svg. This XMLNS attribute, it basically has to be, we require it for the SVG to work, so we must include this w3.org, which is what it depends on. After that, we will remove the preserve aspect ratio. That's why when we change the dimensions of the web page, the aspect ratio wouldn't be preserved. It wouldn't be locked. So we'll do that to none, and then we'll do version 1.1 for this SVG, and we'll use viewbox to shape the SVG. So for the viewbox, we're going to have these coordinates: 0, 0, and 2560, so 2560, and 100. And then we will have the x and y coordinates to 0. We'll set the x and y to 0. And inside this SVG, we will have a polygon class, and we will make it text black. So we have a polygon for the class. We will make it text black, and we'll do fill current. Then we will use the points for it, which is 2560, and then 0, 2560, then 100, then 0, then 100. Again, this polygon and SVG, you don't have to know what it means, what it does exactly. It's basically extra stuff. It's not really related to Tailwind CSS, but we're just using it because it gives us a really cool effect in the website. Okay, now we're done with this SVG. Now we can continue. So let's actually, before we continue, let's have a look at how it looks. See, this is exactly what I meant. Can you see this nice diagonal shape? And it will look even more better will look much better when we continue. So now let's continue designing this section. Next, we will add a new div after the SVG. After this div that was holding the SVG, we'll have a new div, and we will use a container class, and then margin horizontal auto, padding horizontal 4, and we will make it black using background color black. And inside this div, we will have another div. This will be centered using item center, and we will also use flex and flex wrap to wrap everything when it's really small. Inside this, we'll have another div. This will basically hold the image of the MacBook Pro, so we'll make it width full. And for medium devices, we will do a width of 4/12. So, and then after that, we will do margin left auto and margin right auto. And for the horizontal padding, we will do 4 as well. So the margin left auto and margin right auto will allow us to center this div, and the padding x4 will basically give us some padding, some horizontal padding. And after this, inside this div, we will basically have an image of the MacBook Pro. So we're just going to have a class of max W full, so max width, and so the max width would be basically full. We need max W full so that the image, it wouldn't be basically like it would only be, the width of it will be as big as the screen width. It wouldn't be more than that. Okay. So then we will do rounded large for the border radius, and we'll also do shadow large to give the image some shadow. By default, let's give it a width of 400 pixels. And the source, let's get the image that we want to put in. So let's find a nice image from the Apple's website. Again, you can find your own image, but we're just finding one from the Apple's website. And I recommend using Google Images because it's kind of annoying to scrape images from the Apple's website. Okay, we'll use this image. Well, in this case it was easy. You can paste it. Usually the image URL is basically hidden and you have to find it in the using inspect element, but in this case we managed to get the image URL. But anyway, so now we can continue after this. So let's refresh. Let's actually see what it looks like now. As you can see, it looks beautiful, it looks stunning, especially with that black background, and it looks like it's popping out. Okay, so now let's continue. After this div that holds the image, after that we'll have a new div. So we'll skip the image, we'll skip the div, and then we'll have a new div. For this div, we'll give it a width of full, and for medium devices, we'll have a width of 5/12, and we'll do margin left auto and margin right auto. So again, we're using margin left auto and margin right auto, so it can be centered properly, and padding horizontal of 4. We'll do px4. So now let's see how that looks. Okay, now that makes it. So also let's do text white so we can see like how, as you can see, the image is gone to the left now, and we can have the content on the right. So now inside this div, we will have another div. For medium devices, we will use padding right 12, and inside this div we will have another div that will basically hold an icon. So this div that we just done, it basically holds the content of that right side of the well, on large devices it will be the right side. It will be basically for this section. So inside this div we will have another div that will be holding the icon. For this div is going to be text black and a padding of 3, and we will center it using text center. We will use Inline Flex as well, so it can take up the entire row, and we will use item center and justify center as well to center the items, or center the item, which is one icon. And we will use a width of 16 and a height of 16, and a margin bottom of 6, and shadow large. And then we will have rounded full to give it a border radius and some shadow basically, and we will make the background color white, so BG white. Now inside this we will have an icon. So the icon would have a laptop, so it will be an icon of a laptop, so FA laptop, and we will use text large as well to make it a big icon. And after this div we will have a H3. So before we go into this, actually have a look, let's see how it looks. Okay, it looks beautiful. Okay, now let's have a H3 after this div, after the icon, and inside this H3 we will have the title of this MacBook, which is Macbook Pro 13 and 16 inch. So these are the MacBooks available. So now let's style this H3. We will use text 3XL to make it very large, and we will use font semi-bold. And so let's see how that looks. Okay, we also need to make it white, so it actually shows. And then we will also have a paragraph inside it. So let's refresh. Okay, now it's showing. We also have a paragraph after it, and this paragraph is just going to be some text. This is be some normal option. And let's see how it looks. Again, we need to style it, so let's style it. We will do margin top 4, so it has some margin top from the H3, and so it will have some margin basically from the title. Then we will use text large to make it large, and we will relax the reading so that the spacing between the words, and we will also give it a color of text gray 300. Now we can see how it looks. Okay, that looks beautiful, that looks absolutely stunning. Okay, so let's see how actually the website is looking so far. If you go to the top, we have this beautiful video that is very suitable for our theme, which is black and white. And we have these 3 beautiful tiles, which is basically what our website covers well, apart from the iPhone. And we have the iPad section, and now we have the MacBook section. Okay, now we can continue on to the next section. Now let's have a look at how it looks when it's responsive. So as you can see, with all this Tailwind CSS classes that we have implemented, the website looks stunning on all devices. So as you can see, this is a large phone, I believe. So let's go to the top and see. So this is a large phone. Now let's make it even bigger. Now this is I believe it's a tablet, and as you can see how everything is transformed. Everything is still beautiful, and for large devices you have already seen how it looks. So now we can continue with our next section. So now let's move on to the next section. So we're going to implement the theme section right now. So let's go ahead and make a new section after the section that we have just finished. So we will use the new tags, and we will position this section relatively, so relative, and then we'll use PY20 for giving it 20 padding vertically, and we'll also make the background white using BG white. Now also we need to give it an ID of theme so that we can navigate to it when we want to. So also we'll style it by giving it a height. Let's check it out now. Let's see how it looks. Okay, perfect. The section has been added, and if we click on theme, it should take us right down to the section using the ID anchor. Okay, now we will. Okay, let's see. We will have a new div inside the section, and for this div, we're gonna do bottom auto. We're just gonna copy paste the last SVG. It's basically going to be that nice polygon design. Just like I saw you, just like this, as you can see. I explained it before, and pretty much SVGs are not really like they've got nothing to do with Tailwind, but we're using it to make the website really pretty. So I explained it, so we're just going to copy and paste it from the previous section that we used it in, and we're going to use it for this section. This will keep the design very consistent, and it will give it a very nice design effect. Okay. Also, let's change the text black to text white. That's the only thing that we're going to do. So because the actual section is going to be white, just to keep it consistent, because we have a black section, white section, black section. And then after that, we'll open a new div after the polygon that we have just added. And for this div, we're going to style it using container, as this div will be a container. And we will give it MX Auto to make it to make the margin automatic, to center it for the horizontal margin, and we will give it padding horizontal 4 using PX4. So just to explain the class container, it actually gives padding around the content it's wrapped around. So let's just put a text inside this div just to show you. So as you can see, there's a margin and there's some padding around it. If we remove the container, that padding will actually be gone. So it keeps everything nicely positioned with good margins. Okay, now after this, we're going to have a new div inside this container that we have just implemented. Now, for this div, we're going to be using flex wrap, so flex and flex wrap, and we're going to justify all the items to make them centered. So we'll use justify center, and we will center the actual div itself as well using text center. We will also give it some margin bottom of 24, so we'll do MB24. And then after this div, we're going to have a new div right inside this one. Now this is going to hold the content of this section as well, well, part of the content. So we're going to have a title in this one and some paragraph. So let's go ahead and give it a width of full. And for large devices, we will give it a width of 6/12 and a padding horizontal of 4. Now inside this div, we will have a title using H2. So again, this section is going to be dedicated for the legends of Apple. So we're just going to put in a few of the team members that are known. So for this title, we're going to put here are our legends. Let's see how that looks as well. As you can see, centered, but we need to style it because it's not very nice like this. So we'll increase the text size using text for XL, and okay, let's just increase the bolding of it. So we'll use font semi-bold, and that looks much better. Okay, now after this title, we're going to have some we'll have some paragraph under it. In this case, we're just going to have some reference because we're just focusing on the design. We don't really care much about the content for this website. It's just for learning purposes. So let's just do some reference. Let's see how that looks now. Okay, I think we need to style it up a bit. So let's give it some margin 4. Now let's see if that looks much better. Okay, let's make the text grey as well, text grey 600. And we also need to relax the leading because we want some more spacing between the words, so it takes up more space. And so the spacing between the words will be greater by using leading relax. And let's also increase the text size by using text large. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks much better now. Okay, now we're pretty much done with this title and description section for this section. Now let's add another div right after this div that we have just done. So we exit this paragraph. We exit this. To clarify, we will exit the paragraph and then exit 2 divs after that paragraph, and then we will make a new div right here. So this div will basically hold all the elements because right now we're going to be showcasing all the team members, all the important team members in the Apple company. So that's what this is going to serve as. We're going to use flex and flex wrap so that all the elements will be responsive basically for different displays. And inside this flex wrap div, we're going to have a new one which is going to be using width full, so it takes up the full width of the parent element, and it will use width 6/12 for medium devices, so MD width 6/12, and for large devices we will make it use 3/12, so that's like a quarter. And for large devices we're going to have margin bottom 0, we don't have any margin bottom for large devices, and we're going to do MB12 as well for normal devices, and padding of 4 for horizontal padding, so PX4. Okay, now inside this div we'll have another div. Now this is actually just going to store the images of each, so this div is basically going to store the different images. Now, sorry, it's going to store one person's image, and then we're going to have like social icons for this person. Anyway, so this div is going to be using px6, so we'll have padding horizontal of 6 and an image for the person. So inside it is going to have an image in it of a person. So for this image, I mean, we have our own people. You can just go put in whatever people you want to showcase. For example, Steve Jobs or Tim Cook, the current CEO. So you can even choose anyone you want. In this case, we're going to be choosing our own images. So we'll paste in our image for Steve Jobs right over here. Okay, so this is our image that we have pasted in, and you are free to do whatever image you like. Okay. So for styling this image, we're going to be using shadow large, and we're going to be using rounded full to give it a nice border radius. Let's have a look actually how it looks so far. Oh, beautiful. So now we'll also give it some a max width of 120 pixels using style. So in the style section, we'll do the style attribute. Sorry, we'll do max width 120 pixels. Now let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. Now this is perfect sizing, and also let's give it a margin horizontal auto, so it can be centered in its own div. Now, after the image, we're going to have another div that will basically store his name and his info. So for this div, we're going to do padding top 6 to give it some padding between it and the image, and we're also going to center it. Now, inside this one, we're going to give it give him a name, so his title. So we'll use H5 for his name, and let's see, shall we make it text large or text? Let's do text extra large. Now let's see how that looks. Steve Jobs as well for the name, and let's see how that looks. Okay, let's also make it bold, so we'll do font bold. Now under it, let's make a title for him, so his title at the company, which is former CEO. So we'll do paragraph, and we'll give it some margin top 1, so that there's spacing between the title and the name. And let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. Let's just decrease the text size as well. Let's do text SM, and let's make it capitals as well. So we'll use uppercase. Okay, much better. Let's also make the font semi-bold, and let's also keep it consistent and use text gray 500 to match with the other paragraphs much better. Okay, beautiful. Now we can move on to the other div, so we can put in his Twitter account, his Facebook, all that good stuff. So right under this paragraph, we're going to have a new div. Now this div will give it some margin top 6, and we'll make a button right inside this div. And what background color shall we give this button? Yeah, let's make it blue. So we'll do BG blue 400 a shade, and let's make the text white. And now let's give the width 8 and height 8. Okay, so now let's check it out. Let's see how that looks. Okay, and we need some text inside it, so we need some icons inside it, I mean. So we'll use the Twitter account, we'll use the Twitter icon inside the button. So we'll have an icon tag, and we'll use FA Twitter, font awesome button basically. And let's see how that looks. beautiful. I would say let's also give let's put some border radius for, so we'll use rounded full. Let's keep the design consistent with the rounded borders. Okay, that looks much better. And also let's do the outline none. I think that will make it much better. Okay, beautiful. We need some margin right because we're going to have a button next to it. So for this button, let's do margin right 1. And now let's copy and paste it. And now we need to change the icon because we're using Facebook icon. And also we need to change the background color, the shade. Keep the color, but just change the shade from 400 to 600. And it looks much nicer because it matches the Facebook colors, and the other one matches the Twitter color. Okay, let's also give it some margin bottom one as well for both icons, buttons. Sorry. Okay, and because we're going to have some. Okay, so we're also going to have another button after it. So now this button is going to be for Instagram. Again, we're just going to change the color now because we need to match the Instagram color. So let's use purple. So okay, BG purple and a shade of 400 or 500. Let's see how that looks. 400. Okay. I would say increase it a bit to 600 actually. Yeah. And also let's change it to Instagram for the icon. Okay, that looks much better. We have finished doing it. So we have finished making a card for one of the company team members. We pretty much need to copy and paste it for all the other team members. So we're going to copy from the div that is right under the flex wrap div. So the flex wrap is basically holding all the team members at Apple, the ones that we are featuring. So make sure you copy the div element that has px6. And then copy and paste it a few times, so we're going to probably do it 4 times. In our case, we're going to have 4 team members. And now we're just going to change up all the images and the names of the people and their titles. So feel free to do it how you like, basically. So for this one, we're just going to put Tim Cook right over here, and we'll also change it to current CEO. And as you can see, okay, we have 4 Steve Jobs right now. We just need to change the images and the other titles and their names. So we're pretty much done with this section now. We basically just changed the titles and names and the source. So this is the source that we changed. Feel free to do that for yourself as well with what you want to. So Tim Cook as well, and as you can see, it changes these other team members that we've put, and it looks absolutely stunning right now. So let's just go through the website so far, what we have done so far. It's coming together very nicely. Just this one, we're pretty much changing the title for it. And let's go to the top, scroll to the top. As you can see, it looks absolutely stunning. And we can go to the section using the team section. Okay, now we should be done with the section. I mean, if you want to touch it up and add some more designs and cool effects to it, feel free to do that. Add animations if you want to, that's up to you. But we're going to move on now to the next section. And for this next section, we're going to have a contact form. So basically, anyone on this website can contact us using this form. We're opening a new section element right over here, right under the old section, and we're going to do padding bottom 20. And we're going to position this section relatively using relative positioning, to relative, and then we're going to make this into a block so it takes up an entire width, and we'll give it a background color of black, so BG black, because the other one was white, this one has to be black. And yeah, now the ID as well, we need to give it an ID of contact, so that's it's linked to the navigation bar. When the user clicks on contact, it will take them, will scroll them down to this section. Okay, lovely job. Now inside the section we're going to have a div, and basically this we're going to copy paste. Basically this div is going to be having a nice effect, a nice diagonal effect, as you saw, just like we did with the other sections. So no need to explain it again. So we're just going to copy paste that and put it at the start of this section, and it will keep the design very consistent and nice. Only thing is, we changed it to, we're using, basically make sure you have the text black for the polygon, because this section is going to be a black section. And now it looks absolutely stunning, as you can see, and you can see there's a separation from this section and onto the new section. Okay, now for this section we're going to have a div inside it, and we're going to style this div container for the content of this section. So we're going to be using the container class. Also going to use MX Auto class to make it aligned, so the margins will basically be so we'll make it centered by having equal margins horizontally, and padding horizontal is going to be 4 as well. And for large devices we will use padding top of 24, because we have a lot of space. We can, you know, have more padding if we want to, and a padding bottom of 64 for large devices as well. So LG PB 64. Now inside this section, we're going to inside this container div, we will have a new flex div. So this will basically keep the design very responsive using flex and flex wrap. And we will center this div using text center, and the elements inside this div will also be centered. So we'll use justify center to center the elements inside it. Okay, so now let's have a look let's see how that looks on the website. Okay, I mean this is what we need to do text white so we can see the text. Okay, beautiful. Now let's see over here. So we're gonna give this. We're gonna have another div. So this div is actually going to basically have the title and description of the section. So you know the title is going to be contact us. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. So for this div is going to take the full width of its parents, and for large devices the width is going to be 6/12, so basically half, and the padding horizontal will be 4. And inside this div we will have a heading of using H2, and we will use contact us as the title for the section, and right under it we will have a description. For the description we're just going to use some lorem ipsum again. I mean, yeah, focusing on the design. And we also, so as you can see, it looks beautiful now. So okay, so for the H2 we need to give it, so we need to design it, so we'll add some classes to it. We'll increase the text using text for Excel, and we'll make it, let's see actually how it looks. Okay, beautiful. We just need to make it a bit more bold so it stands out more, because it is the title, so font semi-bold. And okay, that looks beautiful, much better. Now let's also we need to also style the paragraph. The paragraph doesn't look that good. Okay, so for the paragraph we'll increase the size by using text large, and that should make it look much better. Okay, that looks much better. But we need to also let's see, here we go. Okay, let's make the words a bit more spaced out, so using leading relaxed, that will give more spacing between the words in the paragraph. I mean space between the lines, so by using leading relaxed we'll have bigger spacing between the lines. Okay, now that looks much better. What else can we do to this paragraph? Let's give it some margin top 4 and margin bottom 4 as well, and let's just also make the color grey to keep it consistent with all the other paragraphs. So we'll do text grey 500. Let's refresh. Okay, that looks nice. 500 is a bit, let's do 300. Yeah, that looks much better now, it stands out better. Okay, now after this paragraph we're going to have 2 divs right under this paragraph, so we're going to escape those 2 divs and open a new div. Now this div is going to keep the content inside it responsive by having flex and flex wrap, and we will use margin top 12 to give it some more margin between this and the title of the section, description of the section, and we will also justify the elements inside it so they can be centered. So we'll do justify center. Now inside this div we will have another div that will basically hold the content of this division, and this div will have width full. It's going to be width full, so it's going to take the full width of the parent, and it will, for large devices though, it's going to take a quarter width, so 3/12, and it will have a padding horizontal of 4, and the text will be centered. So px4 and text center. So I changed the microphone to increase the audio quality. So if you notice a difference, that's basically because I've changed the microphone. Okay, now let's continue with this section. So we're going to have 3 items inside this div that I have just explained that has width full inside the wrapper, flex wrapper. So now we're going to begin with the icon wrapper. So we're going to have a div that will wrap around an icon for the first item. So this div is going to have text gray 900, and we will have padding of 3 and a width of 12, sorry. So padding 3, width 12, and a height of 12 as well. So H12. For the shadow, we'll do shadow large as well, and we will do rounded full to give it a nice border radius. We'll also give it a background color of white, so BG white, and we'll use Inline Flex and item center to center the items inside it, and justify center as well to center the items inside it. They basically do the same job. Now inside this we're going to have the icon, and for the icon we're going to be using FA Medal. So FA Medal, and we're going to make it large using text large. Okay, so now let's have a look. Let's see how everything is going on. Okay, beautiful. We have the medal icon. Yeah, I mean, now we're going to be going on to the next. So we're going to be doing a H6 right under this div. So a title for this item, and the small description as well after it. So let's do the title first. We'll just do lorem ipsum. I mean, this is going to be a pointless section, but it's just for design purposes. You can put whatever you want later. Now after this, let's actually have a look. Let's see how this H6 is looking. Okay, clearly we can't see anything because we don't have text white. Okay, so first of all, we're going to give it some. Okay, now that looks better, but we want to give it some margin top of 5, so that it has some spacing between it and the icon above it. And let's make the font semi-bold. And also let's make it. No, that should be good. I mean, let's increase the size. Let's make sure it's text XL. Yep, that looks much better now. And under it, we're going to have a paragraph. Now, for this paragraph, we're just going to give it some margin top between it and the title, and some margin bottom as well. Margin bottom 4. So, margin top of 2 and then margin bottom of 4. And let's see how that looks. So let's put in some lorem ipsum over here. Let's make it text white because black on black doesn't show. Okay, that looks much better. Also, let's see what can we do to this paragraph. Let's have a look. Actually, let's go back to it. Okay, let's make it grey, so it's all consistent with the other paragraphs. So we'll do text grey 500. No, actually 400. 400 or 300, 400. Yeah, that looks good. No, let's do 300 actually. Yeah, 300. I mean, yeah, looks much better, and you can see there's a difference between the title and the description. Okay. Now after this div, so basically we're done with the paragraph, we're done with the div for this item. We're going to basically copy and paste it 3 times. It's pretty much going to be the same thing. Only thing we're going to change is the icons. Yeah, pretty much just the icons. So there you go. So we have 3 items, and just the icons we're going to change it. So let's see what other icons we can do. So we're going to have a light bulb. So FAS, FA light bulb, and let's see what else can we do. Let's just put okay, we'll put FA poll, like we can have a poll icon. Okay, that looks beautiful, lovely jubbly. Now after these items, let's see what can we do. So this is going to be all one section, but it actually has 2 sections inside this section, so it's going to be a dual section. Now we're going to make the other section that is part of the same section. Basically, this one is going to be for the contact form for this section. So again, so we're going to keep it the same color. We're not going to use this polygon because it's one section. So we're going to use relative positioning. Then we're going to make this section as a block, and we'll do padding, a vertical of 24, and for large devices we'll do padding top of 0, and we're going to keep it the same background color. Okay. Now inside this we're going to have a container, and this container is going to have margin auto for horizontal margining, and padding horizontal of 4. And this container is going to basically have a flex wrap divs to make everything responsive again. So right after the div container that has so we're going to have flex wrap, so that this will make the contents responsive. So when the user is on a smaller device, the content will be wrapped onto other columns basically. Onto other rows. Now we're going to be justifying the element center. So we're going to use justify center, and for large devices we're going to have a margin top of 64, and for other devices we're going to actually have a minus margin top of 48. So sorry, the LGs also has a minus margin top of 64, and for other devices we're going to have a minus margin top of 48. Now inside this div we will have a new div that will take up the full width of its parent, and for large devices the width will be 6/12, and the padding horizontal, we'll use padding horizontal of 4, so we'll add px4. Now inside this div we will have a new div, and this will basically be used for, so it will basically have, it will be like a column. It will take it will be relatively positioned, and it will be a column. So we're going to use relative for relative positioning, and we'll use flex and flex call to make it into a column, and the minimum width will be 0. And we will do break words, so that when we have long text the words will be broken onto the next line. And the width will also be full for this one to match its parent's width, and the margin bottom is 6, and the shadow will be large. Okay. Also, to keep it consistent, let's add rounded large, so that the border radius will be rounded, and the background color will be grey 300. Now inside this div we will have a new div that will basically hold the contents of this contact form. So the next div is going to be using flex auto, so that it gives each element inside it the correct flex based on how much width it wants to take and everything. it will basically adjust the flexing automatically for the elements inside it. And also we will do padding 5 around it, so that's, it has some padding between it and the other elements. And for large devices we'll actually do padding 10 because we have more space. Now inside this we're going to have a H4, so we're going to have a title for the contact form. And for the title we're going to be like, oh, you want to work with us, if you want to message us, so we're going to have a H4 inside this div, inside the Flex Auto div. And for the text we're going to have want to work with us, and we're going to do text to Excel as well. So let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. Just make it semi-bold. Want to make the font semi-bold. And let's refresh. Okay, that looks much better. And under it we're going to have a paragraph. So we're going to tell the user, you will complete this contact form if you want to reach out to us, and we'll get back to you in 24 hours, something like that. So for this paragraph we're just going to give it a margin top of 1. So we're going to make a new paragraph, and then we're just going to put in complete this form, and we will get back to you 24 hours. In 24 hours. So we're going to style it using some margin top 1, so that it has some margin top 1, and we're going to check it. Okay, that looks we need some more styling to this. So after we've done margin top 1, let's see what can we do. Margin bottom 4 as well, because we're going to have more elements under it. So there's a margin between it. And the text, we're going to use text gray 600, because we have white background, so we can do text gray 600. And for the leading, it's not white, but it's a light background that looks very good. And the leading will do leading relax, so that it has more lines between them, especially when you have a really small device. There's some lines between the texts, as you can see. Okay, see, there's when you go on the next line, there's more spacing. Now let's see what else. Alright, so now we've done the paragraph. Now we need another div under it, so we can basically, it will be a wrapper for the input. So with this div we want to position it, we want to have relative positioning, so we'll use the relative class, and then we'll use width full, so W full, and margin bottom 3, and margin top 8. So after that we want to have a label basically for the input, which is, we're going to have like the name, so we're going to have a label for the name. So we'll use the label tag, and for the class we'll have block and uppercase and text gray 700, and let's see how that looks. So we're just going to write name for the label. Okay, that is good. Actually, let's make it bold. Let's make the labels bold. Yeah, that looks even better. And for this label, we're going to use the 4 as well, 4 attributes, and we will do for name. So make sure you have that in. And after that, we're going to have inside this, we're going to have so instead of name, let's do full name. So instead of inside the label we have name, we'll call it full name. And okay, let's see now. After the label we have the input, which is basically what the label is for. So we'll have an input tag, and the type is going to be text. And for the class we're going to give it a border 0, and a padding horizontal of 3, and a padding vertical of 3. So it sits nicely, and a placeholder grey 400, shade of 400. No, we're going to put it inside the class called placeholder grey 400. And text grey as well, we're going to make the text grey with the shade of 700. And let's see how that looks now. Background also, I think, yeah, we need to make the background white. background color white. And let's see what else shall we do. Make the text make it rounded as well. So make this input rounded for the border radius, for the edges, and we'll make the text small as well. And now let's check it out. Let's actually put in some text. Okay, nice. And let's see what else. Let's make it shadow as well. Let's give it some shadow. And for the yeah, that should be good. And after it, we're going to have another div as well. So for this div, we're going to basically copy paste it and then just fix it and then just. So the next one is going to be for the email. So let's copy and paste this and have the same thing, but the label is going to be email, and the type of input is also email. So now let's test it out. Let's see how that looks. Let's put in. Let's see if that. Yeah, that's good. Now after this one, we're going to have a text area. But before I do the text area, I just want to. So these inputs are very short. We want to make them full. So we'll use W full, so width full, as a class. And now let's refresh it, and that looks much better. So after the email, we want to have a text area, so the user can basically type in a message for when sending a message to Apple. So we want to have a div again. We're going to copy paste the div and we're going to change it up. Okay, so now we're going to change it up as well. We're going to remove do margin top of 8. Okay, so after we copy and paste it, we're going to change so we're going to remove the input first of all, and we're going to use a text area because for this input it will be a text area. And also the label, we want to change it to message because this is what the input is for. And let's see how that looks. Let's just double check everything is alright. Okay, the width needs to be full as well because it looks quite ugly like this. Yeah, that looks much better. Okay, so also the margin, the border radius, we want to make it rounded. So the edges will be rounded now by using rounded. Another thing is the margin top, we want to give it a margin top of 4 or 3. Yeah, 3 is good. And now let's see. Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, we should do the margin top above the message actually, sorry, because we will remove it from here. That way it's much better. Yep, that's perfect now. And after the message now, so once the user has put in his name, he's put in his email, he's wrote the message, then he can send the message. So we need the button now. So we want to have a button for sending the message. So we're going to have a div right under the text area div that wraps around the message. We want to have another div, and it's going to be centered using text center, and the margin top is going to be 6. And inside this, we will have a button. For the button, let's make it white, so text white for now. And when it's active, let's do background gray 700. So it's normally white, but when it's active, we'll do background gray 700. And for the text, we're going to make it small. So the type is going to be button as well as an attribute. As an attribute, it's going to be type equals button. And inside it, let's write send message. And let's see how that looks. Okay, so we need to work on that. So let's give it a background of grey 900. And now let's see that. Now let's hover over it. Okay, we need to. Let's do font bold and uppercase. Let's make it capitals as well. Definitely need some horizontal padding and vertical padding. So for horizontal padding, let's give it 6. And for vertical padding, let's give it 3. Now also let's make it rounded. Let's see how that looks now. Okay, beautiful. That looks much better. But let's see what else shall we do to it. On hover, let's make the shadow large. Let's give it a stronger shadow, and also let's give it a shadow, normal shadow when it's not on hovered. And let's do the outline is none. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks much better. And let's do the outline none. And let's do margin bottom 1 as well. So it's basically the elements under it. It won't be stuck to it. Okay, much better. Now that looks really good. Yeah, I have to say this website is looking stunning already. Even though it's almost finished now. We just have the footer left, pretty much. And we should be good to go, yeah, we're done with this section actually, guys. Now we're just going to do the footer, and we're going to wrap this project. Alright guys, so right now we're on the final part of this project. So let's start with the footer now. This is going to be done right after the main tags. So we're going to open footer tags, and we're going to style it using relative positioning. The padding top will be 8 and the padding bottom will be 6. Now inside this footer we will have a div. This div will style it using, this div is basically going to be, again, just like I explained with the other beautiful polygons that give us that nice design. So we're just going to copy and paste it, and we're just going to make it black, or white. Actually, we're going to make it white, because the footer is going to be a white section. And you're just going to change it from text black, to text white. And that looks very nice. Now, let's get stuck in the footer. So we're going to have a container now. After the polygon, we're going to have a container. So this div will also be using MX Auto. So it will have margin horizontal automatic, so on both sides it will be so basically it will center it, and we'll use padding horizontal 4 as well. And inside this we're going to have a new div. Now this div is going to be used so it can be like a responsive container, so when the width changes and the elements cannot be on the same row, then they go on the next row. So we're going to use flex and flex wrap for this, and inside this we're going to have another div that will match the parent's width, so it's going to be width full, and basically we'll take the maximum width it can by using width full. And for large devices it will take half the width using W6/12, and we're also going to give it a horizontal padding of 4. So we're going to have a heading of H4, and we're going to, inside this H4 we're going to write let's keep in touch. So this is going to be a title for this section inside this footer. Now this section will include all the social icons and social links for Apple basically. So we're going to have some, Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. So we're going to refresh. Let's see how that looks. Okay, we need to style this. Definitely we need to style it. And let's see, we're going to give it a 3XL. We're going to make it bigger, and let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's much better now. And just make it a bit bolder, semi-bold, font semi-bold. Yep. Okay, now under it we're going to have a H5. That's just a smaller text, and we're going to be like, okay, you can find us on any of these platforms, and we'll respond in a couple of days, in 1 to 2 days. So you can find us on any of these platforms. Okay, so let's see how that looks now. Okay, that looks good. I mean, we need to make the text bigger using text large, and let's also give it a margin bottom 2, because we're going to have some content under it. So basically we're going to have the social media icons under it, and let's do text gray 700 to make it looks better now. Yeah. Okay, now after this we're going to have a div that will be a wrapper for all the social media icons or social media links. So right under the H5 we will have a div, and let's give it a margin top of 6 so it can have some some margin between it and the description above it. And inside this we're going to have a button. Now for this button we'll make its background color white, and we'll make the text blue. So this is going to be the Twitter button for the social media Twitter link. And so we're going to make the shadow large, and we'll make the font bold, or we'll make it font normal. And let's do the height 10 and the width 10. And let's make the icon inside it centered using item center and justify center. And also let's use align center as well to align this item center. Let's make it a circle by using grounded full. And let's make the outline none. And let's do margin right 2 because we're going to have some more icons next to it. Let's also give it some. Let's go inside it and give it do the icon. So for this icon, let's use FA Twitter. And let's close the button now. So it's basically the button's going to be closed. And let's see how that looks now. Okay, that looks nice. Now, also we need to keep in mind that this. Actually, never mind. So we can now let's copy and paste this. Also, we need to give it some margin right. So because we already gave it margin right. Let's see this because we're going to be copying and pasting. It's going to be the same thing. I just want to make sure that it's all good before we can actually copy and paste it. Yeah, we just want to give it some padding all around the icon. But also the text blue as well, we need to give it a shade. We haven't given it a shade, so let's do shade 400. And yeah, padding 3, not 4 actually, yeah. And let's see how that looks now. Yeah, that looks very nice. Now we can copy and paste this. We can do it so we're going to have a Twitter icon, we're going to have a Facebook icon, and an Instagram. Yeah. So we just want to change the icon names. So FA Facebook, and for this we need to change the color to 600 because that's the color of that's more closer to the Facebook color. And for Instagram as well, we need to make it from text blue. We'll do text purple, and we'll do 500, shade of 500. Yeah, that looks beautiful now. So we're done with this section of the footer. Now let's see. Actually, let's add some more icons as well, because this page is going to be we wanna put more stuff in here. So let's do YouTube, for example, and let's make it text thread 600. And what else shall we do? Okay, let's do GitHub as well. So that way this section can look very nice. Now for GitHub we'll do text black 400, or it's gonna be black, it doesn't need a shade. Yeah, that looks perfect. Now we can continue on the other part of this footer. Okay, so now we're on the second part of the footer. For this part, this div is going to basically hold the important pages of the website. So this is going to be width full. So it's going to be so this div is going to be opened after we've done the button for the icon. We're going to have 2 divs under it. So exit 2 divs under it, and then we're going to have this div right over here. Okay, so this new div is going to have a width of full. So it's going to have full width, and for large devices it will have a width of 6/12, and the horizontal padding of 4. Now inside it we're going to use flex and flex wrap to make it responsive, and we're going to do okay, so we're going to also give it some margin bottom of 6. Now inside this div we're going to have a div that will basically hold the content now of those links that we're going to be using. So this div is going to have full width using wfull, and for large devices it will have a width of a third, so width 4/12, and a padding horizontal of 4. So a padding horizontal of 4, and a margin left auto. So what this does, it automatically calculates how much margin it needs to give it, and it will basically align this all the way to the right by giving it a margin, like it will give it a full margin from its position to the left. And so let's show you exactly what I mean. So as you can see, I've used margin left auto, and it's aligned it all the way to the right. If I remove it, it will basically align it all the way. It will remove the margin. Okay, so now let's put in the margin left auto, and let's continue. So after that, we're going to have a span inside this div, and the span is going to be just some text saying, okay, these are some useful links. So we're going to have useful links in the span, and we're going to make this into a block so it takes up the entire row, and let's see how that looks. Okay, and let's now we need to style it. So let's do uppercase, make it all capitals, and we'll do text gray 600, and we'll make the text smaller because it's quite big. Let's see how that looks now. Yep, that looks much better. And we'll do font semi-bold and margin bottom 2 because we're going to have links under it. We don't want them to be stuck to it. So MB2, sorry, not ML2. Okay, so now let's have a list of links basically. So we're going to use a UL, so inside, after the span, so after we've done this useful link span, we're going to have a unordered list using, so you're going to have a unordered list. So for the unordered list, we're just going to not style it, just keep it like how it is, and we're going to have list items inside this. So for the list items, we're going to have anchors inside the list items, and the anchors will basically hold links to the page. We're not going to have any links right now because this is just for design purposes. We're going to style it using text gray with a shade of 700, but when the user hovers on it, it's going to be text gray 900, so it's going to be much darker on hover. So hover, yeah, text gray, and we're going to make it semi-bold, font semi-bold. And so now let's actually put in some text. So this, for example, about us. Let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. Let's just make it a bit smaller because we want to make it smaller than the useful links. Okay, perfect. Let's also give it padding bottom because we're going to have more items under it, so we'll do padding bottom 2. Now after this, we're going to basically copy and paste this. Yeah, we're going to have like another 4 links. Let's see, 3 links actually. Yeah. So it's going to be 4 links in this. So altogether they're going to be 4 links, and the second page is going to be like about us. So contact us, sorry. And third page is going to be our products, and fourth page is going to be our locations. And let's see how that looks. Lovely jubbly, very nice. So let's just go over the structure, how everything is divided. I mean, I'm sure you know this by now, but just to cover it for some people that might not understand it. So this footer, we divided it into so this whole footer has 12 columns. The first column is taking up 6 of the 12 columns, and the other column is taking up the other 6. Now inside the other column that is taking up the other 6/12, we basically have these useful links. These useful links are taking up 4/12, and we're using them twice. We're going to have 2 columns that are taking up 4/12, and we're going to have one more column that is taking up 4/12, which is going to be blank. So I'll basically show you exactly. We're going to copy and paste this. We're going to copy paste these useful links. We're going to do useful resources now. to change it from useful links to useful resources, and we're just going to use some lorem ipsum for the links for the list items. So just some original ipsum for the last one. Lorem, okay, for just lorem, and let's refresh. As you can see, so we have one more 4/12 that is empty, and those two columns are taking 4/12. Okay, so we should be done now. Now we can move on to the last section, I believe. Let's see what we need to do. I mean, yeah, we're just gonna have one more section for the copyright. I mean, it's optional, but we'll just do the copyright. So if you're gonna use this as a portfolio or whatever, you can use this copyright as well. So we're gonna use the HR after. So we're gonna go on after the last list item that we included for the useful resources. So after the unordered list, we're gonna have 4 divs. Sorry. After the 4 divs, we're going to be making HR. We're going to have a HR tag. Now this HR tag is going to have a separator, so it's going to act like a separator, and we're going to use margin vertical 6, and we're going to make the border grey with a shade of 400. And let's see how that looks. As you can see, we have this line that is a separator. Now, after the HR, we're going to have a div that is going to hold the copyright stuff. So this div is going to be using flex and flex wrap, so it can make this section responsive. And we're going to use item center and use justify between, so that the elements inside this copyright section will be spaced out evenly. Okay, so inside this div, we're going to have. So let's just make sure there's any classes, item center. No. Okay, we also need to use justify center as well to make them centered. To make the elements inside this centered. So inside this we're going to have a div, and this div will take a full width, so W full, and on medium devices we will have so on medium devices we'll have a third, which is 4/12. So 4 divided by 12, and we're going to have a horizontal padding of 4, and a horizontal margin of automatic, so MX auto, so that way it can have equal margins on both sides for horizontal margins, and we're going to use text center to center it. Now inside this we're going to use a div, and this is going to hold the text for the copyright. So it's going to be text SM, and we're going to use text grey with a shade of 600, and we're going to make the font semi-bold, and a vertical padding of 1. And we're going to write copyright. Inside this we're going to write copyright 2021 Apple clone by Code Club Hub. Let's see how that looks now. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so now we have reached the end of the project. Let's just go over everything that we've done. As you can see, the main homepage looks stunning with that beautiful video, and it matches very well with the theme colors, which is black and white basically. And the navigation bar looks beautiful, it's transparent and it's responsive. And if we go down, we have those 3 cards for each section. So we have the iPad section, Macbook section, iPhone is I guess it's just the extra one. But yeah, if we go down, we have the iPad section. Looks absolutely stunning. I must say it's one of the most beautiful websites I've worked on. And we can go down. We're in the Macbook section, and if we go down again, we have the team. So Apple's teams, the members of the team, and the contact us section, so with a form, so the users can basically send a message if they want to, and finally the footer as well. And those polygons look absolutely stunning. It gives character to the website, and it adds a nice elegance to the website. It makes it look very cool. So I hope you have enjoyed this project, and again,